Hello Sudoku friends and welcome to a New York Times Hard Sudoku. Today is November 28, 2022. I have to say I already solved this puzzle. I solve this puzzle every day, but some days I don't want to record it because it's too easy, frankly, for you and for me as well. But I found today's version somewhat interesting, and I wanted to share with you a few of the methods that I employ when I solve a puzzle like this. So let's get started. The first thing I did was I looked at all these four numbers, and I immediately spotted the two down here, of course. So that still lets me need to find a 6, 7, 8, and a 9 for this cell, this cell, this cell, and this cell. So when I see this pattern, I know that I only need to concern myself now with these three cells and to figure out what needs to go there. And of course, the 4 can't go there, so the 4 will have to go in this cell. But since these 4 cells have to be a 6, 7, 8, or a 9, then we'll have to find a 1, 2, and a 3. And since there's a 3 already in this cell and in this cell, it's easy enough. This now is a 3, and now this must be a 1 or a 5, and this must be a 1 or a 5. So that is a very quick start to a puzzle. The next thing I did was I looked at the 3 and an 8 here, and we don't have a 3 and an 8 yet for this box number 1, but they can't go in any of these three cells. So these two cells are now restricted to being a 3-8 pair. And that tells us that these three cells have to be a 1, 6, and a 9. And now we have the 2, 4, and a 5 here, and they conveniently will fall into these three cells in some order. And since there is a 5 already in this row, this cell cannot be a 5, so it's got to be a 2 or a 4 eventually. The third thing I did was I observed the 3 and a 9 here and the 3 and a 9 here, and they put a 3 and a 9 in these two cells. I know this is very easy, but this is exactly how I solve puzzles. I don't always look for the hardest way. I look for the easiest way, since I can't find any more patterns that are this easy at this moment. I'm now looking at other things. One of the things that I look at are the sixes. There's a 6 here that blocks these two cells, and there's a 6 here that blocks these three cells, and the 6 here blocks these three. So this is an easy 6. And now I know that one of these two cells must be a 6. Not helpful right now, but it might be helpful later when I don't have to analyze those two cells again for a 6. And since some of you have asked, this is, I think, my own personal method for remembering digits. I notice them in passing, and when I come across them again, I don't hesitate. I'm making a mental note for later that a 2 and an 8 will have to go in two of these three cells because the 8 here and the 8 here block these three cells, and the 2 here and the 2 here puts a 2 in this cell or in this cell, and therefore a 2 also will have to go in one of these three cells. And what I always do when I find something like this, that I now know that a 2 and an 8 will occupy two of these three cells, I ask myself which other digits are still missing besides the 2 and an 8 from this row. And we are still missing a 1 and a 4 and a 5. We know that this has got to be a 1 or a 5. And this cell cannot be a 4. Therefore, we now know that all three digits here have to be a 2, 4, and an 8. It's really very simple. And what that means is that since this cell was a 2, a possible 2, and this is a possible 2, now the same two cells are also possible 4s. So we have a 2-4 pair in these two cells. We still need to find a 9 for this row, and it's got to go here. While I'm doing this, I also quickly check if this computes with earlier findings. And earlier findings said that one of these three cells will have to be a 9 because this cell and this cell are 3/8, right? So one of these has to be a 9. And now that we find this 9 here, it still makes a 9 in this cell or in this cell possible. And now I know that this cell, or this cell will have to be a 9 as well. And having found this 9, we now can put a 7 in this cell here because of the 7 here, of course, and these two 7s. So this is a 7. And now one of these two cells must be a 7. And we know that this is a 1 or a 5. And these are 2 and 4. So we've got a 1, 5, and a 7 still to find for this row. And because we did all of this analysis, we now know that this cell must be a 5 because there's a 5 blocking these other cells. So this is a 5. Remember, this can't be a 5, right? Because it's a 2, 4. So the 5 goes here. And now with these two 5s and the bottom row 5, we can enter a 5 in this cell like so. And now this is a 2, 4, and this is a 2, 4, and this is a 2, 4. Then I immediately look at this cell, and I know now that it cannot be neither a 2 nor a 4, because then we would have a unique rectangle issue, and the New York Times are, while not particularly difficult, they are always correct. So there are no mistakes in those puzzles. So this cannot be a 2 or a 4. So what can it be? It can be a 1, but not a 2, another 3, another 4, 5, 6, 7. It could be an 8 or a 9. So it's a 1, 8, or a 9. Not helpful to me right now. But I nearly overlooked the pair here. That's got to be, of course, a 1 and a 5. There's a 5 already in this box. So 1 goes here and the 5 goes here, of course. And now the 5 here, and the 5 in the top row puts a 5 in this cell. I'm making a mental note of one of these cells being a 6, because a 6 will have to go in one of these three cells, and we have a 6 here already. So for row 2, and because of the 6 here, one of these two cells will have to be a 6. And while I'm thinking of the 6s, I find the easy 6 up here, of course, because the two 6s here. So we need to find a 2, 4, 7, and an 8 still for this column 4. A 2, 4, 7, and an 8. And look at here. We know that a 2, 4 will have to be in these cells, and there is an 8 here. So naturally, this cell must be a 7. And now this is a 2, 4, or an 8, but we knew that because that is true for the entire three cells here. And we also see that this is now a 1 because we found a 5 up here, didn't we? And this therefore is a 5. But back on track, the 2, 4, and 8 still need to be found for these three cells. And funny enough, I can't place any of them at this moment. But I can place a 7 because of the 7 here blocking these two cells and the 7 blocking these two cells. That puts a 7 in this cell or in this cell. So we still need to find a 7 for row 9. And since it can't go here, 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 or here because of that 7 here, the corner cell is where it must go. And now we have reduced to having to find a 6, 8, and a 9 for these three cells. And that's still not possible. And again, I almost overlooked the obvious, that this cell cannot be a 2 or a 4 because they have to go here and here, and therefore it must be a 1. I'm also noticing the 2 and a 7 here, and the 2 and a 7 here, and they force a 2 and a 7 into two of these three cells. And that leaves a 1, 5, and an 8 still missing from this column, and there's a 1 here. Therefore, the third digit up here has got to be a 1. And these are now 5 and 8. I will explain that again. The 2, 7 here and the 1 need to go in these 3 cells. And that leaves a 5 and an 8 for these 2 cells. And this obviously cannot be a 5 because of the 5 over here. So this is an 8, this is a 5. Now we got the 5 here and here, putting a 5 in one of these 3 cells, except these 2 5s block these 2 cells. And therefore the 5 must go here. I'm studying row 3 now. We need to find a 1, 2, 6, 8, and a 9. Both the 9s and the 6s are pretty restricted. They can't go in these 2 cells, of course, and they cannot go in this cell because of the 6 and a 9 here. So the 6 and a 9 will have to go here and here. And that has an implication on this cell up here, because if this cannot be other than a 6 or a 9, and this cannot be other than a 6 or a 9, where can we now put an 8 in this row? That's right, it needs to go here or here. So where do we put an 8? In this box. This cell and this cell are blocking all of these 5 cells from containing an 8, and a ghost 8 here blocks this cell. So we are left with only this cell for an 8. And that resolves the 3 and an 8 pair we had going on over here, doesn't it? And the 3 here and the 3 here and the 3 down here now puts a 3 in this cell. And as far as I remember from solving this puzzle earlier, that is what breaks this puzzle, because now it's very, very easy, even if it was pretty easy before as well. Because as we remember, these 3 cells have to be a 1, 2, and a 7. And this is a 9 or a 6, then this as well must be a 9 or a 6, except it can't be a 6 because of the 6 here. So the 9 goes here and the 6 goes here. And that gives us a 6 over here, of course, and a 9 here. And this cell now must be a 1. The 1 here and the 1 here and these 2 forces a 1 into this cell in the bottom row, like so. These 2 cells now have to be an 8 and a 6. And this cell cannot be an 8 because we have an 8 over here. Therefore, the 6 goes here and the 8 goes here. And that puts an 8 in this cell. And of course, a 6 in this. The final digit here is going to be a 4. And that takes care of the 2, 4 pair we had going on over here, like so. This last cell now must be a 9. And these 2 have to be a 3 and a 4. This cell cannot be a 4. It has to be a 9. And the 9 here, here, and here, of course, gives us a 9 for this cell, like so. This is now a 3 or a 4, and this is a 3 or a 4. And because of the 3 up here, the 4 must go here, and the 3 here, and the 4 here. The 4 here forces a 4 into this cell up here, and therefore into this cell. And this is now a 2 and an 8 pair. This is a 2, and as predicted, one of these cells now is a 7, and the other one is a 3. Except the 3 here puts a 7 in this cell, and the 3 must go here. The 7 here, and here, and here gives us a 7 for this row, and therefore a 7 must go up here. And this is now a 1, 2, except the 2 is already present in the row. So the 1 goes here and the 2 here. And that puts a 2, of course, up in this cell. And a 2 here, making this the final 8. And now we just need to find a 1 and a 8. On the surface, this puzzle looked very difficult, I think, but once you dig down a layer or two, you can see how easy it is to solve these hard New York Times puzzles. And I recorded this because I wanted to share with you the thought processes that I use when I solve these puzzles. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I hope you'll be back for more soon. Bye for now.